Welcome everyone to another episode of Coral Living. Tonight we are going to dive a little bit deeper into spiral dynamics. Now, if you're unaware of what spiral dynamics is, it's a system that looks over our human values and our morals and how they evolve over time. Now, I did a video on this earlier, which was kind of just a broad view. I did it probably about a year ago. But I wanted to get into more depth because I think there's more to unpack from spiral dynamics than I did in that video. I think it's been a good guide for me. It's helped me over the years understand, I think, people a little bit better, and I think that's what you kind of are looking for from spiral dynamics. A lot of people, I think, they get caught up with this new knowledge of like understanding how people work, and I think that maybe they can get a little judgy. I don't know. Like you actually have known about spiral dynamics longer than me. You got me into it. What was the first thing that kind of caught your eye when you got into it?
Well, just the fact that it exists at all. The fact that that people have studied the just progressive psychology, the idea that people can that they're something like even people's morals or their moral understanding can progress over a lifetime, and and it was fascinating how that applies to the individual and to the group, and that it applies both historically and confined to a single person's lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think the first example that really caught me was when they talked about, for instance, let's say there's a woman who is deeply religious, stage blue, and they have strong feelings about abortion or something.
Yeah.
And they're against abortion, and then they progress in their belief system to a place where they're open to it, and they no longer demonize that kind of action, and they grow an acceptance of it, and they kind of change. But then further down the line, they return to it, but the reason for being against it would be different. One would be sort of like a superstitious reason, and then the abandonment of superstition, and then the return to the original belief system, but it's more based on, and I'm not saying that, like, I'm just giving this as an example, but I'm saying, let's say that person came back to believing that it was wrong, but for medical scientific reasons or something like that.
Versus maybe a religious belief.
Yeah, or maybe got to a point where they were more like, well, sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. So they went from it's wrong to it's fine to sometimes it's right and sometimes it's wrong. Yeah. Like that kind of progression, when I was given an example sort of like that, and I was like, I could see in my own life, not on unrelated topics to that, where that kind of progression had happened, and I started to be able to see people that had grown in that way and how society had grown in that way when you go from something like puritanical Christians to maybe the type of Christians even that we have today, or the type of religious religions being less dogmatic or something.
So today what I want to do is just look at one portion of spiral dynamics. We're gonna be tempted to want to talk about other stages down the spiral, but what I want to do is let today be kind of day one of a series of episodes where we kind of unpack each stage of the psychological progression and how it grows kind of from our perspective, where we're coming from at our lives. There's a lot of people online and stuff that kind of have their views on it and talk about it. I think it's good to remember that it is just a model, that there could be flaws within it that we don't see, that it shouldn't be used as a tool to weaponize and judge others and make them feel less about themselves. and we should use it to just kind of get a greater understanding of who we are. So with that said, the first stage, and in spiral dynamics, these stages of psychological development, they're categorized through color coding systems. The first stage in spiral dynamics is beige on the spectrum. It's the most base, and it gets overlooked a lot. There's a lot of people who talk about spiral dynamics and stuff online and completely skip over beige because they don't think there's really anything of much importance to unpack there because it's so basic.
Maybe they're onto something.
They might be, but
we'll see.
We're gonna dive into the beige waters, which don't get jumped into very often. So from what your understanding is on beige, what do you get from beige?
Beige is babies, people with severe like mental deficiencies, like very senile geriatric old people, cavemen. That's like beige.
Isn't it almost like animalistic?
Animalistic.
It's so primal that it's like.
Yeah, like, well, what do you think it is?
I would say, yeah, it's like that base mode when you enter existence. We were just talking about a video we watched today on it, just to kind of like hash up, bone up on our spiral dynamics knowledge. That it's kind of like the opener to consciousness. It's the beginning phase. Almost like it's so
pre-consciousness.
Yeah, it's like pre. You're so limited. You're completely unaware. You are completely dependent upon the mercy and care of others to make it so you even exist in this universe. And
right, it's very dependent. It's very dependent on others to take care of it. Like
yes.
And an interesting caveat because of that is beige has no differentiation between itself and other, right? Like to beige everything is it doesn't see itself in contrast to the rest of the world as much as the higher stages.
Yeah, it doesn't even make a note of it. It's just there.
Right.
And it will grasp, it will cling to whatever will make it live and be.
Right.
And it's very dependent. When you think of like animals, I was thinking of like lions, like, prowling through the savannah, just like going after their food. It doesn't feel bad when it gets the gazelle, at least not that I know of. I don't think it feels bad for the gazelle. When pure survival is at all cost, it just does what it does without even thinking about it. I don't know, do you think humans can get to a point where they return that far? I don't know, like if you came from a place, I don't know, could you get back to that far?
If you were pushed into an extreme survival situation, yeah.
Apocalyptic?
I kind of do. Well, maybe not even that, but I think prolonged exposure to any particular situation can drive you back down through the stages. Like, I think if you were spent years battling in war or something like that, you'd probably return to stage red. Like, if you were alone in the wilderness and you were struggling day to day to survive to find your food, I think that your senses would start to. I think you'd almost enter into almost like a spiritual state. Your senses would be heightened. You'd be so aware of your surroundings, and because every breath would require like the utmost focus to make sure that you survive. You don't get killed by something. You're gonna get food. You're looking for something to mate with so you can propagate the species. I think that being put in that situation for a long time could drive you back into like a stage beige type state where you don't really you're not monologuing to yourself so much anymore in whatever language you speak, and you're not self-reflecting so much. You're completely engaged, almost like you behave like automatically.
Yeah. Now,
I think. I don't
Yeah.
know. That's just me totally speculating, but
yeah. I think maybe the first steps towards breaking out of beige would be just that beginning phase of coming to grips with the fact where you start drawing a line somehow between other things and yourself. It might be like the very first stage towards moving out of stage beige. I think we start to do that like pretty young as kids. Like, what were you, like 2? We start leaving stage beige?
yeah. Well, you kind of have to. What's after beige? Purple?
Is stage purple.
Right, and so again, another aspect of spiral dynamics, like this is baked right into the the study of it,
Yeah.
is that this things oscillate from self-centric to we-centric, like myself to we, right?
Yeah.
And beige is completely
Focused.
it's-
Self-focused.
it's self-focused, but not in like a conscious self-reflective focus, but it's very much
it's doing what it does.
It's
It's
doing what
actually,
it
it
does.
might be the most selfless because it doesn't even recognize itself as self at that
right.
time.
And so the very next stage is group focused, which is purple,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is tribal, magical thinking. Think tribal.
Yeah. And keys to like one of the things. So usually every phase also going from one stage to the next is usually triggered by some type of recognizing that its stage doesn't do it for them anymore. It doesn't fulfill. There's something limited to it, and it needs to expand.
Is it always that, or is there ever a driving force for the stages that's simply fascination or intrigue to something more? Is it always completely necessary, or is it just you're being pulled further in progression because you're intrigued by what comes next?
Maybe you might be getting bored of the stage that you're in, and you're like, I want to see other things. I want to
Yeah.
feel another side of reality.
The need for wonder or something like that, or the need for like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because when you get further down, it can hardly be said that if you're a very successful stage orange person,
Yeah.
orange being, how would you say orange in a nutshell? Super fast nutshell.
I just super egocentric maybe, and try like,
Egocentric, success-driven,
Science-based.
scientific, very self-aware. That person to go to green, which is a return again to
let's not get too far off, but yeah.
which is group-minded again.
Yeah.
For somebody like that, they can hardly be said to be like lacking. That it's not that they're lacking finances or lacking something like that, but for some reason they'd be pushed.
Well, something's evolving just in the fact that more people are talking about this. More people recognize this. We've had this conversation before. A lot of people used to say that because
There's books written on it.
yeah, it's like I have one of them. Some people say that you have to like. Some people say that you have to like embody each stage and learn all the lessons, all the pros and the cons to each stage in order for you to come to an internal dilemma that propels you into the next stage. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I think the fact that we're more aware now of this, and it's been laid out, and we can study it and learn from it in times past, you couldn't do that. So maybe you did have to go through it completely. But I think the fact that we actually know about it, and we're sitting here and we're talking about it, maybe we can see those mistakes ahead of us a lot clearer and be like, okay, I don't need to make that mistake, and I think I can intellectualize at least, or come to some type of inner understanding about it, that I can now, move to the next stage without having to embody all the negative attributes of each trait. And that's something I think that's needs to be said here, is that each psychological step has like positive embodiments and negative embodiments. I think the goal here is, as we're talking about this, is to help talk about maybe some of the negative things that can come from these psychological growth patterns. Learn something so that we don't have to make those same mistakes, and hopefully maybe push through them. Now, beige is pretty low on the spectrum, being purely selfish, like being completely in need of everything in your external experience to make it so you can survive. That comes with some limitations. You know, a baby can only be a baby for so long. Eventually someone's going to be like, okay, I can't, you're 12, I can't feed you a bottle anymore. So I guess maybe that might be the limitation of that. Eventually your surroundings are going to get fed up with you, maybe. I don't know. Can you see any other things that might be like a problem for beige? Why it has to get, like, all the things you said before, they're all reasonable for, you know, caregiving. But eventually you have to move to
one thing to keep in mind. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at spiral dynamics as a model is that there's a lot of warnings against looking down on any stage.
Yes.
So, like, if you're orange, you're not supposed to look down on blue. You know what I mean? Which is very easy to do. And anybody that doesn't know about spiral dynamics, like, you definitely do that. You definitely look at people at lower stages and judge them. You definitely do. And so you can't. But it doesn't matter how high you are on the list. You're not supposed to look at beige as some kind of negative thing. It's completely. It's like a
necessary
feature of survival.
Yep.
And you know, there's a lot of, you know, kind of neat things about beige that we are hard to see. But if, like, because somebody could be trapped in it. Like, if somebody's got some condition that leaves them with the capacity to have the intelligence of like a 4-year-old for their whole life, then it's gonna be very important that the people around that person take care of that person and nurture them whatever way they can. But are you going to end up the CEO of a business if you're trapped in that? Like, probably not. You know, unless you're.
There is something kind of beautiful also about just admiring each stage for what it is. And in beige, it might be the simplicity of it. There's a kind of a beauty in its need for a complete caregiver. Something like when you look at nature and you see it, you know, it's just doing its thing. There's something nice about, like, if you look at a lion, does a lion worry about tomorrow? Is it thinking about what it's going to do the next day? Or is it just living completely presently? Which in, like, spirituality is, you know, a big thing, is about living in the present.
Right. Well, a big thing you'll hear at any, you know, deeply spiritual yoga studio or meditation center or whatever is they're constantly trying to become one with everything.
Yeah.
So, in some ways, they're trying to return to some kind of a state of losing the distinction, the duality of self and other. And, you know, beige may grasp that a little bit better, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you can look at all the stages sort of like that, you know. Like, take stage red, right? Where that's very, very selfish and very, like, conqueror by any means possible, and vicious and lacking probably empathy. I don't know that you can just abandon everything you learned as you went through whatever that is in your life as an individual. You know, being able to tap into that mentality, no matter how gentle you are, may be a necessity at some point. So, yeah, like, but beige is a tough one. It's no wonder not very many people talk about it. What are you supposed to say about it? There's not much written about it.
Hey, we did pretty good. We got 20 minutes. Not bad.
There you go.
Stage beige. Well, there you have it, folks. I know that this one's kind of a short one for us. I think it's a good...
Are we going to do purple and all of them?
Yeah, I want to go through all of them. But I thought this would be a great start.
Purple would be fun.
Just to, you know, maybe get excited a bit, about it, you know.
Stay tuned to purple. There's like magic and
dancing around
spirituality and all this stuff. And right? And purple.
Yeah. I think it's a fun topic. Spiral dynamics, really helped me. And as we go up through the spiral, I'll tell you how it kind of influenced me, and you can tell them how it influenced you if you want. But yeah, nah, no, you're not gonna. That's fine.
Well, how it influences spiral dynamics itself. It can help.
Now.
It can. I mean, I think knowing deeply about spiral dynamics becomes a way bigger help once you get to the stages that are described as like stage yellow, where you're pretty effectual as a human. You're actually able to cause change in the world, and so one of the kind of not responsibilities, but something that stage yellow people engage in is actually bringing people up the spiral and knowing how to do that and recognizing them. If you're a lower than that, like I believe I am, it's maybe just helpful to not judge people too hard. Because if you see somebody who's very money hungry and very kind of like oblivious to the feelings of others, you're like, okay, that person's really engaged in orange, and that's like, to me, I see a lot of like 20-year-olds really orange these days,
Yeah.
And there's almost like a natural progression to green as people get older, which is more community centric.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to get into that as we go.
Yeah.
But I will end this episode here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you liked it, check out all the stuff we got. We got our YouTube channel here with Coral Living. Justin's got, Barney Eaglewood. It's Tom Starfield. Got our Redbubble accounts. I even got, if you go Coral Living on TikTok, I got TikTok videos now.
Oh snap! Oh, is both our Redbubble accounts on there?
On what?
On the link.
I don't know if they're. No, I don't have them on the link. They have to look.
Okay.
Coral Living.
Barney Eaglewood Redbubble. You can get this T-shirt.
And so we'll wrap it up here, folks. Stay tuned for Stage Purple coming up. Don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, share with a friend, and everybody. Until next week.
Stay spiritual.